Hello everybody, welcome back. In this video, we shall look at some ideas that you can use to make your pen platformer second part more interesting, to earn bonus points and also to learn more from it, right? This game is definitely a little bit on the harder side, but still there's lots of things that you can do to enhance it, to make it even better, right? However, before getting there, let's recall the rules about bonus. It's kind of very important this game because like I said, this game is a bit hard, right? Number one, bonus comes after basic. You always earn bonus. What you can do for bonus is almost endless. What earns you bonus today may or may not earn you bonus in future. Bonus is your opportunity to push yourself, try out new things, amaze everybody. However, remember rule number one, that bonus comes after basic. Right now in this particular case, the basic movement itself is fairly complicated. So it involves my blocks, it involves running them without screen refresh, multiple loops interacting with each other. So try to get more comfortable with that as much as you can before you go in this direction, right? Finally, remember to add instructions slash description on your project page so that we know what bonus ideas you have tried. Now these codes are complicated. It takes if we know what we are looking for, then we find them, otherwise we can miss them, right? All right, so let's see what we can do for bonus in pen platformer 2. Right now I'm dividing, as always, ideas into several buckets. The first one that comes to my mind is really what comes like an inspiration from Chrome Dino. Right now, remember, Chrome Dino is a game that we have done earlier in this program. It's also like a simple platformer, but there's a very, very big difference, which is that now in the pen platformer, it's kind of more realistic. So we have gravity, right? Now that actually complicates things quite a bit because the sprite keeps falling down, and a lot of effort has to be done to make sure it doesn't go through, for example, the floors and also on and so forth, right? But still, there is a lot of things that you can borrow from your Chrome Dino and apply here. For example, you can create different types of jumps, right? You can have maybe a powerful jump and a smaller jump. You can create some booster sprites. You can add some goodies that the player has to collect as it goes along. You can of course have lives and scores. So I'm just going to lump all this into what I call the Chrome Dino inspired ideas, because these ideas will just translate nicely from Chrome Dino until here, right? So this you can do and you should do because it's good practice. You can add sprites to your game to act like boosters and so on and so forth. Next, this game is happening in multiple levels, right? So I was the one idea that comes to my mind is, you could use the timer block, for example, to find out how long the user is spending in a given level, right? And of course, all of that together is how long did the user take to complete a given game, right? Now, I'm going to put a link in the description. It's in a slightly different context where we have used the timer block to learn, for example, in a maze, how long does it take for the player to complete it. But the same idea I applied here. Now here it's interesting because the game happens in multiple levels, right? So we can even tell, okay, at this level people take the longest time, right? And this level people don't take as much time. And I guess many of you are scratchers by now, which means you have access to cloud variables, so you could use that as a cloud variable and it becomes a very interesting addition to your game, right? Apart from score and so on and so forth, right? Next, coming to the more pen aspect of it, right? The platformer aspect of it. You can use more than one color for the platform. And now, in our class game, we use a shade of blue. All the platforms where the sprite goes and lands, stops, is basically blue in color. But you could have, say, multiple platforms, and it's interesting. However, you have to be careful because you have to code those things as well. Because sprite doesn't understand what you mean is a platform unless you code it that way, right? Uh, Next, I can think of a few ideas which I'll illustrate to you, and I'm also giving a project in the description which implements all of this. The last few ideas. You can create smooth movements in the X direction. Notice, our player just jumps, but in the X direction it just moves like along with the arrow. So if I stop pressing the arrow, the player stops moving, right? But you could, do more as I'll, basically, even if you press the arrow, maybe the player slowly stops, right? So it's like a friction on the floor, the player slowly stops, right? Then you can have a situation where the player moves in both directions. That anyway is there in our game. Player moves both left and right, but levels also change in both directions. Right now, this actually leads to some very interesting thoughts. Previously, we have spoken about levels changing randomly, right? So, for example, one could go to four, four could go to two, and so on and so forth. In the pen platformer one, we spoke about this. But now, if you just add this two together, right? So you could have a situation where you have some kind of a, some kind of secret path to your end, And maybe if the player finds it, so probably some kind of a booster sprite, which when you click, when you somehow catch it, you get transported to a new level, and then from that new level there's a secret path, secret gate or something like that, that takes you to the end very quickly, and then kind of ties all of this together, because you are reporting the time that it takes to complete the arena, and that could be like some kind of a secret this thing. But even otherwise, it's a very good programming practice to think about how you can make levels go in both directions, which means that one can go back to 4, 4 goes to 3, 3 goes to 2, right? Again, the project in the description implements this for your benefit. You can take a reference of that and try it yourself, right? Next, what I mentioned is these coding enhancements. Right now, there are a bunch of things that we have discovered in this game, and this is, I must thank the students for this, because it's student ideas that get us thinking. This is a fairly complicated game, so it's natural that it can be improved in many ways. So there are two specific things that we have done over time. One is that the player seems to earlier get stuck in the in the roof, in the stage, top of the stage. We fixed that. The player also sometimes gets stuck underneath the platform, right? So we have separate videos for both of these. The project that I'm putting in the link down in the description implements both of these. So please take a look and try to see if you can implement this in your program as well, right? It could be slightly different for you, but the ideas will be very similar, right? That will definitely be seen as a bonus, right? Finally, and this is where this gets really exciting. Now, all of you, I'm sure you've seen scrolling platformers on Scratch, right? The question is, how are these built, right? So there are scrolling platformers, there are scrolling pen platformers. So we use pen, and and the platform keeps scrolling, right? So I would not think we are, ready yet to build a complete scrolling platform. That's a lot of work, so I wouldn't really advise you to go that direction. However, you can create, say, for example, one level where the platform moves. And this is different from putting a sprite that moves. This is using the pen, because it's ultimately a pen platformer, right? So, using a pen to create a block that moves, right? Now, again, the project in the description implements this. I will go over this also in this video so that you get a reference. The important part here is that, because we are using a pen, right? This, so if it's basically, if it's since it's a pen, all the code that we have written previously continues to hold, right? So which means the player will go and fit, even though the platform is moving, the player will still stop on that. The player will still, sort of reflect from that if it goes and hits that, and so on and so forth, right? So there's lots and lots of things you can do there. Uh, it would have been that much harder if we had used a sprite. Of course, if the sprite is of exactly same color, then it will still work. But I think pen is a little bit more flexible, right? So, uh, I mean, let's, before I sort of wrap this up, let's see all of this in context of the project that we did in the class. So what I will do is that I will talk of the first few ideas in the specific context of the project in the class, and then the remaining ideas I will show you another project which I've also putting underneath, where in the description, where I will show you where I've implemented these ideas, right? So you get a reference, and of course, try not to just blindly copy. Try to understand what's going on, and implement for yourself, right? And this goes true for anything, because there are tons of pen platformers out there. Some of the codes are very complicated, and there's no point in copying code which you do not understand. You cannot explain to somebody, right? So keep that in mind, and let's look at these ideas once again, right? So first thing that I said was, so let's look at this game first, right? This is the class game. Basically, this guy falls down and then it's sort of moving around, right? So the first thing that I said is to add some kind of boosters, score, lives, and so on and so forth. Basically, those are the Chrome Dino inspired ideas, and I think you should do those. Those are like really the low lying fruits for this game. You guys have a lot of experience in Scratch now. Implement those, and definitely that earns a bonus. So you could have, for example, something just kind of goes across, a sprite has to jump and catch it. Something that appears once in a while, sprite catches it. Maybe it's a coin, right? It gives it more life. Sprite, if the moment sprite falls down, let's say, it loses a life, and so on and so forth. Or it hits an obstacle, it loses a life, and so on. Lots of ideas, all inspired from a Chrome Dino, right? Go ahead and implement those, right? Next, I spoke about the time taken for a block, right? So now that really I think, is quite interesting in this game, because this game is some kind of a combination of a maze, of a platformer, and so on and so forth. So you can really use, for example, the timer block here, right? In the sensor, in the sensing, this this timer, we have used this before, and you can start this timer as soon as the game starts, and then you can basically maintain a variable which keeps track of what this timer is when the game gets over, which is, for example, when you reach the last level. If you want to do even more, you can even keep counting at every level. So because notice that this levels change from the player, and we know when the levels are changing, right? So we can keep track of at each level how much time has been taken. And like I said, I mean, given that I assume many of you will be scratchers by now, if you can even create a cloud variable and say, okay, look, historically people spend this much time in level 1, maybe level 2, the lowest time in level 2 is so and so. So you can create very nice detailed reports which are pretty interesting, right? Next, I spoke about more than one color for a platform, right? So probably I should just explain what I mean by a platform, right? Platform is really this sort of this floor where the sprite stops, right? So now in this game, everything happens from this very important function called touch floor. Right, so touch floor has this color, touching color, not so basically if touching color, then all of this happens. This is what is the platform, right? So we have only one color on the platform, but in your game, possibly maybe after 3 levels or after 4 levels, whenever the platform is of a different color, right? Which means that you will have to add this condition if this or this, and also on this, right? So this is interesting. If you do that, definitely you deserve a bonus for that, right? Now for the remaining ideas, I will take you to another game which I'm also going to share with you, right? I'm putting the link in the description, which is actually quite similar to the class game, but I've just added a few things to enhance them, right? Number one, notice in the class game I have to keep pressing the right arrow to make the player move. Here on the other hand, I have basically given my player a smooth movement. It moves for a while and then it slows down, right? Now how did I do that, right? So let's just briefly look at this. I have got this code here where I'm treating x, I'm treating basically like x also as like a kind of a jump. So the player changes x by x speed, and this x speed keeps slowing down, right? So as a result, the player moves slowly, and it's kind of like this. It appears that the platform has some kind of a friction, and the player stops in that. I think it's quite interesting. It looks pretty cool. And again, by the way, there's no compulsion that your player should be just this kind of a square. You can use another sprite which has more interesting animation and so on and so forth. Go ahead and do that to make your game more interesting, right? Now, next thing I spoke about player moving in both directions and also levels changing in both direction, right? So this I think is a really nice programming exercise. So for example, now player moves left, player moves right, player moves left, and if I go left, my player ends up in level 4, right? If I go further left, player ends up in level 3, then level 2, right? Uh, on the other hand, let's say if I go further, okay, so I have to be careful here. If I go further, sorry, if I go further here, right, then I can go back to level 4, right? Now this, how did I do this? Well, I basically replicated this condition. I enhanced it a little bit. So I have this variable called x speed. Remember I showed you earlier. Now x speed means positive, means sprite is going from right to left. I'm sorry, left to right. X speed negative means sprite is coming from right to left, and I can use that to determine whether I should wait for x more than 230, or x, I've got one more loop somewhere here. Yeah, x less than minus 230. I put comments here for you to sort of understand this. But the moment I discover that x sprite is moving in the other direction, I start putting the levels in the different way, right? Now, in fact, this code is quite interesting. It requires a little bit of thought to get it correct. So, I urge you to try this. It's quite interesting actually, right? Next, I spoke about this coding enhancements, right? Now, what do I mean by that, right? Notice in this game, even if let's say I go and, maybe I'll go to level 3 and make a jump, right? So, oops, sorry. Let's say do this. If I go to level 3 and oops. Ah, so I'll go to level, yeah, here. So, okay. Now if I jump, right? So if I jump this, notice my player doesn't get stuck there, right? Even though I'm making kind of a large jump, my player is not getting stuck. That's because I have got some code here for the player to basically, I've got this code here that if y position is more than 175, then set it to 175 and set y speed to 0. There's a separate video. I'm putting that in the description where we speak in detail about this. This was brought up by a student, and I think that's how I implemented this, right? Next, finally, I also spoke about one more enhancement where the player, even if, let's say sometimes player gets stuck inside these platforms, right? I mean, under these platforms. Now, in this code, I've implemented logic to avoid this. Again, there's a separate video I've created for that, because that's also very interesting to understand how it's working, right? So even though I'm pressing my up arrow, the player is not getting stuck here, which means I cannot move my player by just putting it underneath, right? That's an interesting bit here, right? So those are the coding enhancements. Maybe there are more. This game is fairly complicated. So if you get some ideas, please let me know. I think we can try to implement those as well, right? Finally, okay, I spoke about this thing called moving platforms, right? So in this game, I have created a level for you, right? This level two, so I just have to cross these levels, right? So level 2 to level, oops, go to level 3, right, to level 4. I'll just go through these, and I have created a level for you where notice this platform actually moves, right? So if I jump and I move this, now this obviously is a very simple movement, right? You can do many more things. This is like the first step to creating a scrolling platformer, and I think this is very interesting. How I did this was in this, I've created a level 5. Basically, the entire philosophy is to keep erasing this screen and keep drawing it again and again, right? So this is not a sprite sitting there. This is actually the pen, and the beauty is that because I'm using the same color as the earlier levels, right? So the entire code just keeps working, right? So I don't have to, write code again to, for example, write this code touching this sprite and so on and so forth, right? So for a sprite I could have also used, but it must have been exactly this color. Sometimes that's restrictive. So here I'm using a moving platform in level 5. Take a look at this, and this is something, like I said, this is the first step to creating a scrolling platformer. That could be quite hard, but really I think this gets you thinking in that direction, right? All right, so with this I hope you find enough ideas to enhance your game, to learn more from it, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much. Take care. Bye bye.